Okay, yes, please do pray. Thank you.
Dear God, thank you so much for today. Thank you for everybody that's here, and thank you for this Bible study that Darren is teaching. And I just pray that you would give us all open hearts and just help us to learn a lot and just speak through Darren and help us to grow closer to you and learn more about you and learn how to defend what you say in your word. And I pray that you would be glorified and that we just pay attention and in your name.
Amen. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. I'm going to start bringing, I know DVDs are out, but I have a whole stack of DVDs here. This one's called Metamorphosis. I grabbed it because we're talking a little bit about metamorphic rocks tonight and but anyway, this is Metamorphosis of in life. So anyway, if you would like a DVD, this is very well done and very inspirational. Come up and grab one afterwards, and you can keep it because I got a bunch of them. Okay, so looks like we scared a lot of people today. This is probably our most scientifically technical one tonight that we will do. But I'll try to keep it, down. I have to keep it down because I'm down. I don't understand half this stuff, but I understand the process. I understand the basics of it. All right. So this is their big guns. This is evolution's big guns here for absolute evidence for the very old age of the earth. Okay? This is it. This is, you ask them, what's your best evidence for the old age of the earth? They will say radioisotope dating. Okay? So we're going to tackle that tonight and see what happens. Okay? I think we have a very good argument here, and I think you might be surprised at some of the things that you learn tonight. Okay? So don't let the first 10 minutes of this scare you. Okay? We're going to just talk about the process of radioisotope dating and the science of it, because I know some of you might want to know that. If you don't, just for 10 minutes, and then we will bring application to it, and everyone will be right on board with us, okay? All right, so what I have here is a hourglass. It's actually a 2-hour glass. Okay? It takes 2 hours to run through. But you can see that there's some sand in the bottom, and there's a certain amount of sand in the top, and that it's coming through this at a certain rate. Okay? And this is one way to measure time. But when we're talking about rocks, the very similar thing is happening in this rock right here, right now. What's happening there is happening right now in that rock. Okay? There are isotopes, or basically atoms, in this rock that start out as one element, and over time, like this hourglass, they turn into another element. Okay? So you've got, for instance, one of them is called potassium argon. Okay? This rock has a certain amount of potassium in it. Those potassium atoms at a certain rate, just like you see a certain rate happening here, are turning from potassium into argon. Okay? They can actually, it's an amazing discovery that they've made that this actually happens. Okay? And by the way, creationists don't argue that this process happens. Okay? No argument there. All right? So they see the amount of potassium that's in there, and they see the amount of argon that's in there, and they watch and they see how quickly the potassium is turning into argon, and they can do the math by looking at how much argon is down here, how much potassium is left here. the rate that it's going there, and they can tell you by doing the math, okay, well, like looking at this, how long has this been running for? Somebody? It's just approximate. It's a 2-hour hourglass.
45 minutes.
Okay, 45 minutes, let's just say an hour to keep it even, okay? An hour, okay? And we just do that by looking at this and that and the rate that it's going and say, okay, yeah, about an hour. If it's a 2-hour hourglass, about an hour, okay? Now, how long ago did I turn this over? You said an hour. Jack, how long ago did I turn this over?
10 minutes.
About 10 minutes ago, really. Yeah. Okay? Because what you don't know, you made the assumption that this has been running steady for that I turned this over about an hour ago. Well, really, I turned it over about 3 hours ago. And after about an hour went by, I did this and stopped it and brought it here and started it again. Okay? So you made the assumption that this has been running steady the whole time, right? You also made the assumption that when I turned it over, that this compartment was full and this compartment was empty. No, when I started it, there was some in here and there was some in there. So you have to make some assumptions on this as to when this thing actually got going, okay? The same assumptions that we make on this are made here in this rock, okay? They assume that when this rock was born, that it had nothing but potassium in it, meaning all the sand was at the top. And they assume there was no argon in it at the bottom. Okay, that's the assumption that they make when this rock was born. And then they look at it and they say, look, there's 1,000,000 years worth of argon in this rock. That means this rock is 1,000,000 years old. Okay? Hang in there. Hang in there. So, that process does happen. Okay? So let's just talk about it a little bit here. Okay, dating rocks and fossils. Okay? How does it work? Here we go. We have one original element, let's just say potassium, in a rock, and it decays over time into another radioactive element. Okay, that's the argon. Okay, the original radioactive element is called the parent product. What it turns into is called the daughter product. Okay, this is just for you youth back there who are going to go to college. Okay, and learn all this stuff. All right. So how much of each element is in the rock determines how long this process has been happening. Okay? So if potassium argon, let's just say there's 1,000,000 years worth of potassium in here, and there's 1,000,000 years worth of argon in here. Well, that means 1,000,000 years has passed by since this rock was born. Okay? The decay rate is based upon the observable decaying. What they actually look and they actually count atoms, okay, with the microscopes that they have. They can actually look at the rocks and watch atoms changing from potassium to argon. Just like you can watch the sand coming through here, they can actually watch this process happening and count how many potassium atoms turn into argon over a certain period of time, and then they do the math and they come up with the age of the rock. So there's some assumptions that are made, though, here in the dating of that rock. And it's the same assumptions that I talked about here, okay? Assumption number one is at the origination of the rock had only the parent element in it and no daughter. So they assume when this rock was born, and this is a piece of lava, so it was born, at a certain time, that it had only potassium in it and no argon. That's a huge assumption that they're making, and we're going to see this is where their big downfall is right here. Okay? That's the first assumption they make. The other assumption, next assumption they make is that the rate that it has remained constant over time. For instance, this is remaining constant right now, right? But what if there were two pieces of sand, 2 or 3 pieces of sand in here that got hot somehow and kind of cemented together and hit the thing? What would that do? It would throw off the rate that the sand is moving, right? It would throw off that rate. Or we could say maybe this got really hot somehow and softened and opened up wider, and now it's going faster than it used to go. Okay? So that's the other assumption. They assume that the rate that they're looking at today of potassium atoms turning into argon is the same throughout history, and that it has never changed. Another assumption that they make is that nothing has been added or taken away from each of the elements during the entire process. I may have taken the lid off of here and added more sand in here, and you don't know it. Or I may have taken the lid off the bottom and taken some out, and you don't know it, and that messes up the calculations. Well, there's things that affect what's going on inside. The heat affects what's going on inside this rock. Water affects what's going on in this rock and the rate the rate that's happening there. And that nothing interrupted the process, that nothing like this ever happened to the rock, to where it, okay? All right, so those are just some assumptions that are made. Now, we're almost done with the science here, okay? There's 3 main types of rocks, okay? There's igneous rocks that are formed by underground magma released to the Earth's surface and hardens when cooled, such as lavas. Okay, that's lava there, okay? And you can remember igneous rock by the word ignite, meaning it was born by heat, okay? Then there is metamorphic rock, where one type of rock under pressure and heat changes or morphs, there you go, metamorphic, into another kind of rock, such as quartz. Quartz is typically a metamorphic rock. It used to be something else. It got heated up and turned into quartz. Okay? And then there is sedimentary rock. Small sand-sized sediments, sedimentary sediments, mixed with different kinds of sediments. And it becomes a rock when wet and under pressure, such as sandstone and limestone. Approximately 90% of the Earth's crust is sedimentary rock. Okay? Like sandstone. You look around here, it's all sandstone, except where you see a lava flow. Okay? Pretty much all sandstone. All right, those are the 3 main types of rocks. Now, radioisotope dating is also called radiometric dating. And these are some of the methods that are used. So I mentioned potassium argon, but that's just one method that they use. Rubidium strontium is another one. There's a certain amount of rubidium atoms in here that are turning into strontium. There's a certain amount of uranium atoms in here that are turning into lead, and so on. So it's not just one process happening in here. There's lots of processes happening in here. So that gives them a way to double check their dates. If potassium argon gives them a date of 1 million years and it's accurate, well then thorium lead should also give them a date of 1 million years if the process works, right? I mean, it wouldn't give you 2 different dates if this process works. Okay, so just a few facts about these things is, first of all, this process only works on igneous rocks. So lavas, basalt, that kind of thing, this process will work on, this radiometric dating. Okay? Does not work well at all on metamorphic rocks because it was one thing and it turned into another thing, and that kind of messes everything up, okay? And it does not work well on sedimentary rocks because there's different sediments in here of grain. One grain of sand in here will give you one date, but another grain will give you another date because it's a whole bunch of sediments that came in and formed this rock. So there's all kinds of sediments in there, so it doesn't work well there. And it does not work well on fossils either. Fossils are a metamorphic rock, meaning they used to be bone and they turned into rock at some point. So what I'm getting at is radioisotope dating only works well on igneous rocks, rocks that are formed by underground lava, basically, okay? Everything I'm telling you here, evolutionists and creationists agree on, okay? There's no argument there. Just, this is one evolutionist kind of just verifying what I'm saying here, okay? He says this: I'm disappointed when physicists say that sedimentary rock layers are dated radiometrically, okay? He says, no, this can't be dated radiometrically. Only lava can, only igneous rocks. I can also think of no cases where radioactive decay methods are used on fossils, okay? So here he is just kind of acknowledging what I just said. And like I said, there's really no argument here between the two groups on this process. Okay, so we've talked about this before. This is the Grand Canyon here, okay? And the Grand Canyon is made up 99% of sedimentary rocks, okay? Some kind of sandstones, all right? Now, if you cannot date sandstone, sedimentary rock, with this method, and you cannot date the fossils that are found, and fossils are 99% of fossils are found in sedimentary rock. You can't date the fossils and you can't date the rock that they are found in. Okay? So how do they date the fossils? Okay? One of the main ways that they do it is they look for lava, igneous rocks in the strata. Okay? So for our illustration here, let's just say this is all sedimentary rock here and it's filled with fossils. Okay? Can't date the sedimentary rock, can't date the fossils. But let's just say this is a layer of lava here. Okay? It's not, it's really shale. But let's just say that's a layer of lava there. And for our purposes, let's just say that this is a layer of lava here. Okay, it's not, it's limestone. But they can't date any of this sedimentary rock, but they can date this layer of lava and they can date this layer of lava. What does that give them? It gives them kind of bookends, right? To date, they say, okay, well, if this layer comes out to be 100 million years old, and this layer comes out to be 200 million years old, then we know that everything in here is somewhere between 100 and 200 million years old, okay? Makes sense, right? I mean, makes sense. And the closer you get to here, the closer you are to 100 million, and the closer you get to here, the closer you are to 200 million. So it makes sense on paper. It makes sense like, oh, okay, I think they got a good thing going here, okay? And, well, we'll get to it. So this seems to make sense if the dates of the bookend rock layers are correct. If this truly is 100 million years old, and this truly is 200 million years old, that gives you a good reason to say all of this sedimentary rock in here is between 100 and 200 million years old. Okay? But the question is, are these rocks really 100 million years old and 200 million years old? Are the ages that this process gives us reliable? Okay, so now we're going to get into application. Okay, application. Do they show millions of years, these layers, like this top layer and that bottom layer? The answer is yes, they do. Okay? Yes, they do always come out with an age at least hundreds of thousands of years old, and usually in the millions or billions of years old. Okay? Are you scared? Are you worried that we got a real hole in our theory here? Hang in there. Hang in there. Yes, they do. Here's the main word here. They always come out to hundreds of thousands or millions or billions of years. Always. And therein lies their problem. Okay? I'm going to show you. Good old Mount St. Helens to the rescue again. Okay? And this is just one of several that I'm going to show you. Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980. 10 years later, they went into the dome of the volcano and got some lava from there that they know was deposited there in 1980. No one argues with that. Okay? They took it in to the lab and said, can you potassium argon this date, this rock for me? And so they did, and it came out to be 300,000 years old. A rock that is 10 years old came out to be 300,000 years old. Okay? That's the youngest date that they came up with. They used another process, one of these other ones, that gives, another process gives an age of the same rock as 2.6 million years old. A rock that is 10 years old. Okay? Now you might be asking yourself, well, maybe they're dating the lava. You know, the lava's been down in the earth for millions of years. Maybe that's what's getting dated. No. Both sides agree. The clock starts when the lava comes out wet and hot. When it cools off and hardens, that starts the clock on the process. Okay? There should be 100% potassium in here and no argon. That started the clock. Okay? So a 10-year-old rock, like say this was from Mount St. Helens, should date 10 years old. It doesn't. The minimum age that it gives is 300,000 years. The maximum age that it gave was 2.6 million years. Okay? So, no process that they used gave the correct age. Okay? And also notice that each different process gave different ages. Right? They can't both be right. Potassium argon says that this is 300,000 years old, and another process, uranium lead, let's just say, says that it's 2.6 million years old. Can it be both? It can't be both, okay? And the truth is, it's neither. We know that this rock is 10 years old, okay? Now you might be thinking to yourself, okay, Darren, you found an exception to the rule, you know? No. This is the rule, not the exception. Okay? I'm going to show you just 4 or 5 here real quick to show you. This is the rule. Young rocks date old, always. Okay? Let me just give you some examples. Any Lord of the Rings fans here? You recognize this mountain? It's Mount Doom in the Lord of the Rings movies. And I'm going to call it Mount Doom because I have no idea how to pronounce that. It's in New Zealand. But Mount Doom erupted in 1955. And they went in and they got 11 samples collected to date, the rocks, okay? And they made sure they were all from the 1955 eruption, very easy to do. And they used 11 different of these methods to do it. There's about a dozen of them. So they used almost every one of these methods. Potassium, argon, uranium, lead. They're the same process but different elements, okay? Well, They ranged anywhere from 270,000 years to 3.5 million years. All 11 of these processes dated a rock that was about 50 years old at the time, at a minimum of 270,000 years old, with a maximum of 3.5 million years old, a 50-year-old rock. Okay? Nepal, Italy, a volcano. They got rocks from this volcano that were 23 years old. One process gave an age of 5 million years. Another process gives the age of the very same rock as 12 million years old. So you might think, oh, well, they just grabbed a $5 million year rock and they grabbed a 12 million year old rock. And no. They took the same rock, broke it in half, said, okay, do this one with potassium argon, let's just say, and it comes out to 5 million years. They take the other half, okay, do this one with uranium lead. I don't know which processes they used on particular rocks, but it's the same rock. And one comes out at 5 million years old, and another one comes out at 12 million years old. Not only do they disagree with each other, but guess what? Neither of them is right. They're both wrong. Basalt from Mount Etna, Sicily, formed in 1972. They just used one process on that, probably potassium argon, came out as 350,000 years old, a rock that was probably at the time 25, 35 years old. Okay? This is a volcano in Hawaii. Lava rocks from this place are known to have been formed by volcanic eruptions in around 1800. Yet they show ages ranging from 160 million years to 3 billion years. A rock that they know is 200 years old is, through this process, comes out at a minimum of 160 million years old, a maximum of 3 billion years old. Here's your take-home point. If you don't leave with anything else today, leave with this, okay? So that you can talk intelligently to someone about this, okay? Here's your take-home point. Every time a rock of known age is dated with this process, it is wrong every time. Radioisotope dating always dates rocks of known age much older than they really are. Okay? That's the rule. That's not the exception, that's the rule. All right? That's why they get mad. These rocks that were dated by creationists. Why? Because evolutionists know that this process will not give the correct date on these rocks. They know they'll come out at millions. So they get mad at the creationists. Why are you sending in a rock from Mount St. Helens that's 10 years old when this process only works for rocks that are millions of years old? Because we're making a point. A 10-year-old rock comes out as millions of years old. And every rock that we know the age of comes out as millions of years old. Okay? That's your take-home point. And my question, and it is this is incapable of dating young rocks. Okay? So here's my question. If a dating process always gets the age wrong on rocks of known age, why would we ever trust it on rocks of unknown age? Okay? There's your two take-home points right there. Okay?
And Darren?
Yes, please. I got a cup of coffee, so.
There isn't even a mathematical formula that would say, okay, here's a 10-year-old rock, and so if you take X off of Y, off of this old one.
I was told there would be no math. I'm kidding. No, let her finish, go ahead.
So, because each of the samples are coming out with different ages, but let's just go with the potassium one that you said. You couldn't just take Mount St. Helens and go, okay, well, let's use the 300,000. So take 300,000 years off of every other one, because this lava is going to change at a different rate than Hawaii lava, possibly?
Okay.
I don't know, that's a question.
No, the rates, they've got the rates down pretty, solid. So potassium argon will always have this, it's called a half-life. Okay, without getting into details there. But potassium argon, and I don't know what the rate is, let's just say it's the half-life of potassium argon is 1 million years, okay? It's the same in every rock. That rate is in whether the rock is from Hawaii or Mount St. Helens. Potassium argon will always have the same rate.
Okay.
But a different uranium lead will have a different rate. Okay? But you would expect that if these processes work, even though they have different rates, the math should bring you to the same number. It should give you the correct age of the rock.
Between all of the different processes, but I'm just saying, okay, if we just fell on one and said, minus this example from Mount St. Helens that's a 10-year-old rock, from what you think is happening over here with this, I don't know, 10 million year old rock, that math doesn't even work, right?
No. What it does show us is, let me go back. What this process does show us is it shows a range. Now let's see, we're going the wrong way here. Back. So the Mount St. Helens rocks, which were only 10 years old, came out to between 300,000 and 2.5 million years old, a 10-year-old rock. But when we did the Hawaii one, which is 200 years old, look how much older the dates came in that process. Okay? So this does show us a general understanding that, okay, it does look like this rock is younger than this one, okay? But the numbers are way off, way off. This process did show us that the rock from the Hawaii volcano was older than the rock from Mount St. Helens. Okay, it was almost 200 years older than the one from Mount St. Helens. It did show us that, but it got the numbers totally wrong. Okay, millions here to billions as for a 200-year-old rock, as opposed to hundreds of thousands to millions for a 10-year-old rock. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. Maybe we can talk afterwards a little bit more, okay? Yeah, please ask questions, because I know this is difficult.
I remember learning in college that word assume, because they are starting with assumptions. And ASS means you make an ASS out of you and me when you make an assumption that it has to be millions or billions or something outlandish like that. When you see it happen, and there it is 10 years later.
I learned that illustration. I learned that illustration from Felix Unger, from The Odd Couple.
That's one of the things I remember. Not really, but that's the underlying error, I think,
Well, there's a ton of underlying errors. Here's one of them here. Here's the big problem right here, okay? Here's 5 of the main methods that are used, that are happening inside this rock right now, okay? The effective dating range. If I were to take this rock in, and I don't know how old this rock is, but if I were to take it into a lab and say, I would like to have this samarium neodymium dated, could you give me a age on this rock using that method? that method will make this rock somewhere between 100 million and 4.6 billion years old. Okay? Now, I take the same rock in and I say, I would like to have it thorium lead tested. Okay? This rock then will come in at between 50 million and 4.6 billion years old. Okay? Uranium lead will give us 10 million to 4.6 billion. Okay? Rubidium strontium will give us 10 million to 4.6 billion. And the one that will give me the youngest age is potassium argon, somewhere between 100,000 and 4.6 billion years old, if I bring this rock in. Okay? So that's the ages that this rock will be dated. Okay? Now what if I know that this rock is 100 years old and I got it from whatever, somewhere where we know a volcano erupted 100 years ago, and I brought it into the lab. Which one of these processes is going to give me the correct date? None of them. None of them. Yeah.
Hey, so the rock you're bringing back from the moon, are they running these kind of tests on?
Yeah, I got one here.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Just looking at those numbers that you have posted right there, it's all flawed because it has a youth age that they're all different, but the old age is all the same.
The assumption.
Well, that's because the assumption is that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old. Okay? The funny thing is they have rocks that come up at 18 billion years old. Okay? The Earth hasn't, so they have rocks that have been around for 10, 12 billion years before the Earth was created. Okay? So that they're just using 4.6 as that's how old the Earth was. Yeah.
Have they not figured out what they're doing is wrong?
And if they have, why do they still do it?
Yes, they have. They know. They know that this is their range. So what they say, and again, this is so frustrating, they'll say, okay, you see this range here? What this range tells us is that this process does not work on young rocks, but it does work on really old rocks. My question is, how do you know that rock is old? Based on what? Because a 10-year-old rock is going to come out at 2.5 million years old. So they say, no, it works on old rocks, it doesn't work on young rocks. Well, wait a minute. Is that a hand, Sarah?
Yeah, I was wondering, what about radiocarbon?
We'll get to carbon dating. Okay, I should have mentioned this. We are, matter of fact, did I not have it? We're not talking about carbon dating yet. That we'll get to in a minute, okay? Carbon dating is different. I thought I had something on here. Carbon dating is the same process, but it does not date rocks. Carbon dating only dates things that used to be alive. Okay? So this wood, I can carbon date, but none of these processes will work on wood. Okay? Carbon dating will date this shirt, assuming it's cotton. Okay?
5 million.
It will date anything that used to be alive. These processes will not date anything that used to be alive. They only date igneous rocks. Okay, so we'll get to carbon dating in a minute. Carbon dating is actually very creation friendly. We'll get to that. Maybe not today though. Okay, so my take home point on this particular slide is this. Which one of these dating processes will give the correct dates if the Earth is really 7,000 years old? None of them. None of them. If you take a rock that is the age of the Earth, 7,000 years old, and bring it in and have it dated with any of these processes, it will come out as millions of years old. Okay? So if the Earth is young, none of these processes work. Okay?
So one other question. So the assumption was that it was 100% potassium at one point.
Mhm.
on this 10-year-old rock, can they measure how much potassium?
Yes, that's one of the major problems, is they look at a 10-year-old rock, and a 10-year-old rock should be nothing but potassium and
Right.
hardly any argon in it. Yet they look at it and they say, there's 2.5 million years worth of argon in there. You can see the problem.
Yeah.
There's the problem. That rock was created, born with argon in it. 2.5 million years worth of argon in it when it was born. Okay? So,
They adjust it out.
no.
If there's a measurement tool, you would have to assume as well that because the potassium and argon and the potassium drops turning into argon,
Mhm.
that it would continue to fall to a point where the heat of the earth would turn it back into lava, would it not? Does that make sense?
I don't know, you'll have to ask God that one when you do it.
And then of course, and then another volcano, another eruption turns into a rock again.
Okay, okay, yes, that's one of the assumptions that's made here is, like, remember I said, they assume that there was no interruption in the process. I'm going to show you slides here in a little while, hopefully today, that show that where we have evolutionists admitting that there are certain things that can happen to this rock that completely resets it. One of those things is a huge catastrophe. What are we back to? Noah's flood. Okay? Heat and water can reset the clock in this piece of rock, even without it melting and turning into something else. Okay? And so, this assumes that this rock has not been through any catastrophes. Okay? Well, we believe it has. All right. So here's a evolutionist. He says, to pin down the age of older rocks, and here he's admitting this only works on older rocks, geologists rely on radiometric dating, which tracks the radioactive decay of elements within a sample. But in the past decade, it has become clear that the results from different techniques and different labs don't agree. Okay, they're coming, but they're not going to let go of this. This is their, what's the cow, what is that? The sacred cow, whatever. They're not going to let go of this, but they do recognize if I use different techniques to date this rock, it's going to give me completely different ages. If I even send it into a different lab, it will give me different ages. Okay? They've taken a rock like this. Matter of fact, they did this at Mount St. Helens. They took it and broke it into 3 pieces and brought it to 3 different labs and said, date this with one method. Let's just say potassium argon. All 3 labs came out with considerably different numbers using the same method on the same rock. This is called discordant dates. Okay, one method gives you one date, another method gives you another date, and who knows which date is correct. Okay, here's your moon rocks. Okay, moon rocks. One method dated these moon rocks at 2.3 million years old. Another dated them at 8.2 million years old. Another at hundreds of millions of years old. Okay? And so, it doesn't matter whether it's Earth rocks or moon rocks, it does the same thing. Is there anything more you needed to know about that? Okay. Yeah, it happens the same thing with moon rocks, okay? Well, is it 2.3 million years? Or is it hundreds of millions of years? I wanted to get sarcastic here for a minute, but I won't. I probably will in a minute, though. All right, so here's another evolutionist admitting that different methods give them different dates. It is now obvious that radiometric techniques may not be the absolute dating methods that they are claimed to be. Age estimates on a given geological stratum by different radiometric methods are often quite different, sometimes by hundreds of millions of years. There is no absolutely reliable long-term radiological clock. The uncertainties inherent in radiometric dating are disturbing. Okay? All right, so here's an example. This is the Grand Canyon. Down here you have the carnitas basalt. That can be dated because it's an igneous rock. Up here at the very top are two volcanoes spewing out lava. Those can also be radiometrically dated. Now, according to evolution, the bottom of the Grand Canyon is hundreds of millions of years older than the top of the Grand Canyon. We believe it's hundreds of days older at the top than at the bottom than it is the top. But they say it's much, probably a billion years down here and 100 million years up here. Okay, they dated this basalt down here, and the lava that came out of these rocks, out of these volcanoes here. The lava from these volcanoes dated at 1.3 billion years old. The lava the basalt way down here came out at 1.07 billion years old. This down here that should be a billion years older than this actually came out younger than these. Okay? And again, don't get confused that, oh, well, the lava was coming out of these volcanoes was way down here. No. The clock starts when this lava dries and cools. Okay? That's when the clock starts. Okay? And both sides agree with that. Okay? So I could go on and on with this, showing you that this is the rule and not the exception. Okay? I'm going to show you just a few other things here in the Grand Canyon, okay? The Grand Canyon is almost all sedimentary rock, but there are intruding layers of lava and basalt that come up in here, okay? So this particular, you can't date any of this stuff, but you can date this with this process. Okay, so this one is the Bass Rapids diabase sill. Okay, potassium argon dates that at 841 million years old. Samarium neodymium dates it as 1,379 million years. That's almost twice the age that potassium dated at. Well, which one is right? And it really, okay, here comes the sarcasm. The answer is, how old do you need it to be? Seriously. If you need it to be billions of years old, we will measure it using Samarium neodymium, whatever. If you believe the rock is only 100 million years old, we'll use potassium argon. How old do you need it to be? Okay. Here's another one. This is the carnitas basalt here. Okay. Potassium argon measures it at about 500 million years. Samarium neodymium dates it at 1,500,000,000. A billion years difference of the same layer. Okay? Yeah, there it is. How old do you need it to be?
Is that where the term
What's
give or
that?
take a billion years comes from?
What's that?
Is that where the term give or take a billion years comes
Yeah,
from?
exactly. And they throw around these numbers like, oh, a couple million years off. We cannot comprehend a million years. We can barely comprehend 1,000 years. We can all right, 2,000 years ago, Jesus walked on the land. 4,000 years ago, Abraham. 1,000,000 years, and yet they throw these, give or take, 50 million years. That's huge, huge. See, the problem is, when you take a rock like this and bring it into the lab, and I know I'm being sarcastic, but these guys are trying to do the best work they can, these lab technicians. You don't just bring a rock like this in and say, can you date this for me? You have to fill out a form that goes with this rock. Where did you find this rock? What level in the geologic column do you believe this rock came from? How old do you believe this rock is? Okay, and based upon those questions, they date the rock. And based upon your answer, that will give them which one of these processes they will use. How old do you need the rock to be? Really, okay? Here's an example. How old do you need the rock to be? This is a personal illustration here, okay? I talked to the city of St. George's geologist a few years ago and asked him, how would you radiometrically date the rocks at the bottom of the Grand Canyon? Now, I'm not making fun of this guy. He was very nice. I had a couple good conversations with him, and it was very cordial, very nice, and he's doing the best job that he can over there using the education that he was brought up with. Nice guy, and I don't even know if he's still there. This is about 10 years ago, so don't assume that it's the guy that's there now. But I asked him, how would you date the rocks at the bottom of the Grand Canyon? What method would you use in this process? And he admitted, this is the process we would use, right here. His answer was, first of all, you need to know which isotope process to use, because different processes will give you different dates. Okay, so he admitted that to me, okay? So I asked him, how do you know which process to use then to date a rock at the bottom of the Grand Canyon? Here was his answer. You use the process that you know is going to give you the number closest to the age that we already know it is. Okay? I'm not making fun of him. He legitimately thought this was the best way to go. We know that the bottom of the Grand Canyon is 1 billion years old. So we would naturally use rubidium strontium on that or whatever, because that will give us 1 billion years. You see that? You see that? So here's what it is. We take the age that we believe it is and then use the process that will confirm our assumption. How old do you need it to be? That really is the way it works, okay? Except it's done scientifically. Where did you find it in the I found it at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Oh, okay, okay. And the only reason that the lava, like at the top of the volcano at the top of the Grand Canyon and the layer at the very bottom came out totally wrong, was because they didn't tell them where they got the rock. Okay? If they'd have told them, we got this from the carnitas at the bottom, they would have used a different method that gave them the 1 billion years. If we'd have told them that it came out of the volcano at the top of the Grand Canyon, they would have used a different process that would have given them millions of years. You see? That's the way the process works. We'll finish this with this one, and we'll do carbon dating next week. Sarah. Dating of skull 1470. I'll show you again, how old do you need it to be? This is a ash layer that had been previously dated 220 million years old. It's in Africa. They dated it for whatever purpose. I don't know why they dated it, but they dated it, and it came out at 220 million years old, and nobody questioned it. You know, That's what it came out as, that's what we're gonna accept, you know, and if you deny that it's 220 million years old, Mr. Creationist, you're a science denier, okay? So, they dated it at 220 million years old, and again, no question about it, you know, but then along came the problem. They found a skull under the ash layer. So, that ash layer had to have come around after the skull, right? I mean, that only makes sense. If it's under the ash layer landed on top of it. It happened after the skull. Well, that is much, they don't believe that human skulls were around 220 million years ago, okay? They believe that skulls were only around, human skulls were only around 3 million years ago, right? What are we gonna do? Well, all you do is you radiometrically date the layer to come out to 2.9 million years, okay? And that's what they did. They redated it using a different method, and it came out to the age that they needed it to be in order to accommodate evolution, okay? And like I said, these are not, I'm not grabbing at weird, you know, things off to the side. This is the rule. This is not the exception. This is the way it goes. And you would think, like somebody said, that don't they see the problem here? And apparently they don't, you know?
That seems embarrassing, that they would be that far off. You would think that they would be ashamed of, how did we get it so wrong?
Exactly, you would think that, wouldn't you?
But, I mean, I don't agree with either one of the dates, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't either. Like, as a creationist, I believe this person, it's a person, died when a volcano from Noah's flood covered him 4,500 years ago. That's my belief, okay? But if I want a radiocarbon and try to prove that true, which one of these processes are going to show this ash layer as 4,500 years old? None of them. It won't do it. Doesn't work on those. Okay?
now was that a fossil? Is that skull what?
Yes, yes, yeah. It was supposedly a missing link. It's a human fossil. Okay, there's carbon 14, so I think we'll start there. Okay, where did I lose you?
The beginning.
At the beginning? Okay, we're gonna start over again for Dan.
Yeah, just read this.
Seriously, any questions or, I mean, isn't it frustrating that this is their, right here, that process is their sacred cow. If you deny that that rock is anything less than 100,000 years old, you are a science denier, okay?
It's not science.
I mean, it is in the sense that whoever discovered these processes happening in the side of these rocks was a genius. You know, this process does happen in here. It's just because of the assumptions. Like, look, right now, you've got, what, 10 minutes worth of sand in this hourglass here, okay? If I were to turn it over now, okay, now there's a little bit there and a lot there. Let's see. I lost it. I lost my illustration there. But anyway, I can't even, sorry, must be getting late. Anyway, no one denies that this process is happening inside the rock. It's just the math that's used and the assumptions that are made. That, like I said, you take a rock from Mount St. Helens, that should have no argon in it, and get it tested, and it has 2.5 million years worth of argon in it. Truly, obviously showing that it's not empty. There's not no argon in a rock when it's born. It has 2.5 million years worth of argon in it when it's born. They just assume, no, it only had, it was all potassium.
You would think that they could work so take the 10-year-old, so turn that back over. Take the 10-year-old rock, and that top is the potassium.
Mhm.
That's how little potassium is in it. It's changed this much. And work the equation backwards. What do we get? What do we have to do to the equation to get 10 years?
Right.
That's how much
That's true.
potassium.
That's true. Yeah, I have to think about that. That's a good thought. Why couldn't they do that? Yeah,
Then apply that same math over here.
yeah.
And see
Now, there
if
are
that's-
other ones. There's, I don't know, throw out some weird radio halos, fission tracks, that kind of thing. There's also some of these processes that do give young ages, okay? But they get thrown out because they don't believe those. They know that this rock is 100 million years old. So if you use radio halos and it gives you an age of 5,000 years, that gets thrown out in favor of the 100 million years, okay? Completely discordant ages, but that one's gonna be thrown out because we know that this rock is millions of years old, you know? But that's a good thinking there. And I'm sure they've thought it through and how can we make this work, but apparently it doesn't, because like I say, they laugh at creationists for bringing these rocks in and getting them dated. Because they say, you can't do it. You can't date a rock that's 25 years old with any of these processes. It only works on old rocks.
It also doesn't answer the question, how old do you want the rock to be?
Mhm.
It's deception.
And they always want it to be old, right? But, yeah, okay,
Well, we can change, it's kind of like the weather.
all right. Anyway, I think we just knocked the legs out from their sacred cow, under their sacred cow, you know? We'll get into carbon dating next week, same process, but it works differently. This one only works in thousands of years. It doesn't work for millions of years, carbon dating. Carbon dating only works for something, according to evolutionary thinking, 50,000 years or less, carbon dating works for. Anything older than that is gonna be carbon dead. It won't have any carbon in it, doesn't work, okay? This is where carbon dating becomes a friend of creationism. Because, guess what? They found carbon in dinosaur bones. Dinosaurs are supposed to have lived 65 million years ago. Why is there still carbon in there? They found carbon in, every time they date coal, they find carbon in it. Coal is supposed to be hundreds of millions of years old. It should be radiocarbon dead, but it's not. Diamonds, the oldest, hardest thing that they believe is compressed life from down in the mantle of the earth, and comes up at least 1 billion years old. They wouldn't even think of carbon dating that because they know it's 1 billion years old. Why waste your money carbon dating a diamond when we know it's at least 1 billion years old? We're not even going to waste our money. So creationists come along and say, well, we'll waste the money. And they radiocarbon date these diamonds, and guess what? They have carbon in them. Meaning, none of these things can be more than 50,000 years old. Okay? We'll get into all that next week. All right? Any other comments or thoughts? I know it was a hard one today. But, all right. All right, let's pray. Father, we just pray that you would help us to use this information to just, first of all, gain confidence in your word, that your word is true. And give us courage to not just take this and strengthen our faith, but courage to use it and go out into the world and share the truth with people. Not so much about the age of rocks, but the rock of ages, Lord, about Jesus. Jesus. Jesus is the one who said, from the beginning of creation, God's prophets have been prophesying. Was he wrong? No, Jesus, we know you weren't. You created all of this. Help us use this, Lord, again, not just to gain knowledge, but to go out into our world, go out and talk to people, and share the truth that we're figuring out. And again, just that this, we don't have to talk with them about rocks, but that this would give us courage and confidence to go out and share the truth of Jesus with other people. Use this in our life, Lord, as not just a collection of knowledge, but as a collecting of souls. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you.